You wake up in a room that doesn't remember you, not because it's unfamiliar, but because it doesn't care. The stone beneath your back is rough, pressed into the sharpest parts of you. Your wrists are tight, raw, and stiff. You can't feel your fingers, not from cold, but from stillness. You've been lying like this for far too long. You open your eyes, darkness greets you. Not complete, not honest, just enough to make the shadows dance. You're in a cell, that much you know. The air is too thick, the silence too unnatural, and the smell? You can't name all of it. Mildew, smoke, old blood, and something sweet like rotting glass. This place is ancient, older than the name they'll put on your grave, older than the lies they'll carve into court records. You're not the first, not even the 100th. Someone scratched marks into the wall, 6 groups of 5, a 7th unfinished. You try not to count your days the same way, but your mind is starving. It feeds on patterns. We're born in a cell. You were born in light. A small cottage on the edge of town. A mother who smelled like soap and pine. A father who died before you had words for grief. You were quiet, observant. You noticed things. How the wind bent differently on the day the goats refused to leave the barn. How the river smelled strange the night before the fever came. You didn't call it magic, you call it sense, but they call it something else. They always do. You remember the knock on your door, not loud, almost polite. 3 men. One held a scroll, one held a crucifix, and the last one held a neighbor's hand. They didn't ask you to explain. They read accusation, testimony, witness. The only thing missing was truth. They say you spoke to animals, that a crowd followed you to crowd, that your garden grew too fast, that you healed a boy's fever without prayer. And worst of all, you smiled at a widow's son. It never takes much. The town had seen too many bad harvests, too many stillbirths, too many signs. And signs are hungry things. They need someone to point at, someone to blame. You became the mouth the devil spoke through, the womb the devil touched, the tongue that cursed the bread. And they dragged you here for safety, for order, for God. There's a bowl in the corner, wooden, chipped, empty. You lick your lips and taste nothing but air and ash. You don't remember your last meal, but you remember the look on the God's face when he brought it. Pity. Followed by fear, followed by nothing at all. They say it's dangerous to speak with witches, even if they are starving, especially if they are starving. In 1602, a woman named Alice Gray was jailed for dreaming too often. In court, She said nothing. The judge declared her refusal to speak was proof of guilt. Witches, he wrote, require no voice to curse. Their breath alone carries sin. She was executed 3 days later. Her silence killed her. Her voice would have done the same. There are no correct answers, only punishments delayed. You wonder how many times, how many names have died in this room, how many stories ended where yours is beginning. You want to write, to leave something behind, but there's no paper, no pen, only a wall. You use your wall, scratch a symbol you once saw in a book. Not a spell, not a prayer, just a shape. It feels like resistance, even if no one sees it, especially if no one sees it. The woman 2 cells down has stopped crying. You heard her on the first night, pleading, explaining, naming saints. The gods stopped coming, and when she stopped speaking, that's when she started humming. You once believed in miracles. You once thought water could speak. That if you were quiet enough, the flame would show you the future. It never did. But now you see things, not visions, memories. You remember the first time you picked herbs that weren't yours, the first lie you told your mother, the first time a man called you dangerous for knowing too much. You remember it all now, like it's trying to surface before the fire takes it away. The bell rings. Not for you, not yet, but it's a sign. Time is moving again, and that means pain is coming. In 17th century England, witches were not kept in comfort. They were kept in isolation, wet floors, open sores, no warmth, no privacy. Because weakness made you confess faster. A woman who was cold and sick and afraid was easier to bend. And if she died before she confessed, well, that was proof enough. You used to scream at things like that. Now, it's just another living thing passing through your sentence. You wonder if it knows what you are or what they say you are. You wonder if it would run, if it could read your soul. They are coming, not for justice, not for truth, but for confession. They'll not ask if you're innocent. They'll ask if you dream, if you bleed, if you know the names of demons. And you'll not answer, because in this place, there's no answer that ends with freedom. Your name is no longer yours. Your voice belongs to the record. Your future belongs to the flames. But your story, it still breathes. And this cell, this place that forgets you, has not silenced you yet. The door opens, not with a knock, not with a command, just the sound of a key turning, like an afterthought. The gods don't speak to you. They never have, not out of cruelty, but because speaking would mean acknowledging that you are still human, and that is inconvenient. They unlock your chains with the care one gives a rusted blade, deliberate, impersonal. Your wrists are raw, your ankles pulse with pressure, your breath fogs in the gold. But theirs does not. They've done this too many times. One gestures down the hall you walk. Not because you choose to, but because resistance now is only a shorter path to pain. You don't ask where they are taking you. You already know. You've heard it whispered through the cracks in your wall by other women, those who came before you, those who stopped speaking after they returned. The chamber is not a place, it's a process. It is where you have become their version of yourself, where questions are knives sharpened with scripture, where your silence is more dangerous than your scream. The door opens, not into a room, but into a theater. 3 men sit at a long table, a scribe, a priest, a magistrate. They do not look at you as they enter. They look at the papers in front of them, page half filled. Your name already written, blank spaces waiting for your sense. You're told to sit, not asked, told. The chair is wood, wide, and it's slightly back, designed to remind you who is upright and who is not. They ask your name. You give it. They ask if you know why you're here. You do. But you hesitate. That too is written down. In 1605, Magistrate Matthew Hopkins, the infamous witchfinder general, demanded written confessions from 17 women in 1 month. All of them began the same. I was tempted. None of them ended with freedom. These records were passed from one trial to the next. A new woman, a new name, the same sin. He asks the first question, have you ever felt unnatural desires? You don't answer. Because what does that mean? Desire for what? For knowledge? For rest? For anything other than this? The magistrate sighs. The scribe writes, resistant. Next question. Do you speak to animals? You think of the dog who slept by your door, the owl who watched you gather mint. You think of the bird that once landed on your hand. As if summoned by thought, you say, no. They write, untruthful conceals familiar spirits. The priest leans forward. He asks if you have ever had dreams of fire, of flying, of red-eyed offering gifts. You answer, I don't remember. He smiles. The first expression you've seen. The scribe writes, spiritual amnesia, common in diabolical possession. Next, they ask you about your body. Have you ever found marks you could not explain? Spots that do not bleed? Places that feel numb? You remember the scar on your shoulder from the pot that fell when you were 12. You remember the mole on your thigh, the one your mother used to kiss and call a lucky charm. You do not speak of them, but they already know. They always know. Mini case file. Bridget T. Age 36. 1621. Accused after giving birth to a stillborn child, Neba claimed she had moon blood from her breast. Examination revealed a cluster of freckles on her back. Declared marked by Satan. Confessed after 18 hours without water. Burned publicly. The child buried in unconsecrated ground. He begins quoting scripture. You've heard it before. Every line, every twist of translation. But here, now, it is not medicine. It is weapon. A rope turned serpent, a balm turned blade. You're asked if you believe in God. You nod. They write, delusion, which is always feign faith. You're asked if you love God. You hesitate. They write, obvious corruption, refuses pious affirmation. He does not need to say it. This part is done. You failed their test because their test cannot be passed. Because it was never about proof, only performance. You do not play the role they wanted. So now they'll write the ending themselves. In Salem, 1692, a man named Gallus Corre refused to enter a plea, so they pressed him with stones. One, then another, then another. His last words, more weight. He was not trying to be a hero. He just refused to speak the words they needed. Because those words were never his. They were theirs. He whispers, confession spares the soul. You ask, does it spare the body? He doesn't answer. You leave with less than you entered, less dignity, less voice, less certainty, but not broken. Not yet. That part comes next. You were not convicted in that chamber. You were expected. And expectations are harder to escape than chains. End of chapter 2. Chapter 3. The Mark of the Devil. They come for you again, this time without ceremony. No scriptures, no questions, no accusations. This is not about words, it's about your body and what they say it hides. The place they take you is not a room, it's a hollow carved from stone. Low ceilings, a basin in the center, a table, a box of tools. One torch burns, and it even seems reluctant. The priest doesn't come here, only the midwife. But she no longer delivers life. She doesn't speak to you. She speaks about you. Strong hips, she says. Could be a temptress. Stubborn jawline, devil's pride. Mouth too calm. She does not look into your eyes, only at your skin. You're no longer a soul. You are evidence. You're told to undress, not asked, told. The guards turn away, not out of decency, but because they need not see this again. They already know how it ends. They call this procedure an examination. But there's no care in it, only ritual. She checks behind your ears, your scalp, your feet, your thighs. Every blemish is noted, every scar questioned, every mole doubted. She asks if any of them bleed. You say, you don't know. She smiles. The first human expression you've seen in days. But it isn't kindness. In early modern Europe, witch prickers were hired to search women's bodies for the devil's mark. A mole, a scar, or area of numb flesh believed to be a sign of a pact with Satan. They used brass pins, sometimes retractable, to create the illusion that a mark did not bleed or cause pain. No mark meant you were hiding it. A mark meant you were condemned. She presses the point to your shoulder. You flinch. Normal, she says. She presses again. Your thigh. You bleed. She frowns. She presses the third time, near your breast. She writes, suspicious mark, unresponsive to stimulus. You want to scream, not from pain, but from the violation of being reduced, of being measured like livestock, of being dissected without a knife. This is not examination, it's inventory. They are cataloging what they already intend to destroy. You remember being proud of your marks once. Each one was a memory, a bruise from climbing too high, a scar from caring too much. Now they are sins. Proof, fuel for firewood. She says, this one feels wrong. She presses. You gasp. She smiles again. They love when you react. It makes the record cleaner. Case file. Isabel Green, age 40, Scotland, 1660. Accused after widowhood. Too calm in her grief, midwife claimed she had a devil's teeth behind her knee. Confessed under duress. Said the devil came to her in dreams. Later recanted, burned away. Her cat was hanged beside her. The midwife steps back, nods. The guards drag your dress over your shoulders again. The fabric scratches. It smells like straw and sweat and despair. You're not thanked. You're not spoken to. You're simply taken. Back to your cell. But this time, something follows you. Not a demon, not a curse. A sentence. Your body is not yours. Not in this era. Not in this court. Not in this religion. It is a map they can reduce. It is a map they can redraw. A scripture they can rewrite. A vessel they can drain to prove a lie. What bleeds is guilt. What doesn't is guilt. What trembles, what doesn't. What flinches, what resists. All of it becomes part of the story they already want to tell. You lie back on the stone, still trembling, still exposed. You've been touched, measured, marked. They found what they were looking for because they always do. You're no longer just a prisoner. You are now something worse. A body that fits the prophecy. You stand in a room built for judgment, not for truth, not for mercy, just for watching. The floor groans under your bare feet. Your dress, still damp from the night before, clings to your legs like regret. Your arms are bound in front of you, not tightly. They don't need to be. No one here believes you'll run. They know where you would go. Nowhere. The trial chamber is crowded, but no one meets your eyes. Not the girl who once borrowed sugar from you, not the midwife whose child you helped deliver, not the man who once offered you a wildflower on Midsummer's Day. They are silent now, their hands folded, their heads bowed, their mouths filled with prayers they don't believe will save them. They aren't here to witness, they are here to agree. He enters like a bishop in a storybook, cloaked in black, buttons straight, chin proud. He carries two things, a gavel and a script. You're not on trial, you're on stage. He reads the accusations aloud. 3 counts of witchcraft, 2 counts of blasphemous speech, 1 count of communing with unclean spirits. The words spill from his mouth like oil, thick, slick, unable to be cleaned once poured. You are told you may speak, your mouth opens, but the room is already full of noise, of assumption, of prophecy. And besides, you've learned that speaking only gives them more to twist. So you say nothing. They write. Defiant, unrepentant. Mini case file. Judith Renal, age 33, 1610. Stood silent at her trial, judge wrote, stubborn in sin, cursed with the devil's stillness. Verdict, guilty. Sentence, hanging. Her last act was to smile. They called it a smirk. He asks you if you know the consequences of silence. You nod. He asks you if you're ready to confess. You shake your head. He sighs. The priest crosses himself. The scribe smiles. None of them are surprised. They didn't bring you here for a trial. They brought you here for a conclusion. Your fate has been waiting for you, long before this chamber existed, long before your birth. It was written the moment you became a woman who would not kneel. You catch his gaze. He looks like your brother once dead, curious, afraid. Innocent enough to believe that witches are real, but not old enough to know they are man-made. You do not look away. You want him to remember this moment. You want him to grow up wondering if the flames were worth it. Execution by fire at dawn. In the field behind the chapel, he calls it a cleansing. The priest calls it righteous release. The crowd murmurs. And the sound is not grief, it is relief. They've done their duty. They've named their scapegoat. And now they get to go home. What is a trial? In 1629, a judge in Bamberg wrote, trials are the handmaid of truth, and women are the servants of Satan. He oversaw 132 convictions, all witches, all women. Of those, only 6 spoke in court. All 6 were tortured. 5 recanted their faith. One died before her sentence. The court called it purification. It was genocide in slow motion. They don't need you to confess anymore. They only need you to survive long enough to look guilty. And you've done that, simply by existing. It's a whisper from someone in the crowd. You don't turn to see who. You're afraid it will be someone you once loved. In the European witch trials, over 50,000 people, mostly women, were executed. The vast majority never had a fair hearing. Many were convicted based on silence, bodily marks, or the testimony of jealous neighbors. And once convicted, they were rarely remembered. You lie down, not because you want rest, but because there is nothing else to do. Tomorrow is the end, not of life, but of memory, of name, of voice. You're marked long before the pen, long before the priest. You were marked the moment you knew how to read, how to say no, how to question things that weren't written in the Bible. And now they'll burn you for what they put in your mouth. You don't cry, you don't pray, you just whisper one name, yours, to make sure someone hears it before it vanishes into ash. The last night. This is your final night. You know this, not because they told you, not because a priest came, not because of any word or gesture. You know because of the quiet. It feels different, thicker, heavier, as if even the air understands what's coming. They gave you food tonight, not much, just enough warm bread, the end of an apple. The same hands that chained you have brought you something human, and it's the strangest kindness you've known in weeks. You eat slowly, not because you want to savor it, but because you know it's the last thing you'll ever taste. You do not thank them. You do not speak. You once feared this moment, the last breath, the waiting, the not knowing, but now you're too tired to fear. The fear has burned itself down to a single glowing coal. And even that feels quiet. Many accused witches were reported to become serene before execution. Some historians called it madness, others surrender. But the truth is simpler. The body cannot hold terror forever. Eventually, even horror gets tired. And what remains is a stillness that feels holy, even when born in hell. You speak aloud, not to pray, not to scream, just to remember what your voice sounds like. You say your name. You say your mother's name. You say the name of the first boy who kissed you beneath the orchard tree. You say them like spells, as if they might protect you from being erased. You remember everything now, every kindness, every cruelty, every time you thought silence would protect you and every time it did not. You remember the day you saw a friend dragged from her home because a baby died in her arms. You were 10, she was 16. They said she was cursed. You said nothing. Now you understand why silence is contagious. You try to list the good things you did. You lose count at 5. You try to list the sins they saw you committed. You stop after one, existing outside their rules. You wonder if that's what being a witch really is. Not cursing crops, not flying in storms, just being too much of something they didn't invent. Too curious, too calm, too alone. Mini case file. Hilda K., age 19, Wiesberg, Germany, 1629. Accused for reciting poetry near a church. Her neighbor testified that words not written by a man must be whispers of Satan. Confessed under sleep deprivation. Burned with 2 others. Her ashes were scattered across road. There's a crack in the ceiling. You count the edges. You trace it with your eyes like a child follows the stars. The crack is the only sky you've seen in weeks. You imagine stars beyond it. You imagine the wind. You imagine freedom, like a smell you once knew but can't quite place anymore. You close your eyes. You see a field. Your feet are bare. The grass is wet. Someone calls your name, softly, not with fear. You want to follow the voice, but your body is made of weight. Still, you try. You walk towards the voice in your mind. They'll say you confessed, even if you didn't, even if you can't. You didn't know anyone was still alive in the cells beside you. You thought they'd all gone silent. What's your name? She doesn't answer, but she begins to hum a lullaby, or maybe a funeral song. You've heard it before. Your mother sang it when the fever came. You hum it too. Not for comfort, but for company. Most women accused of witchcraft never had their final words recorded. But dozens of code scribes write, she sang as they lit the fire. Some believed they were hymns. Others said they were curses. But most likely they were lullabies to themselves. Notes against fear. A final act of authorship in a world that erased everything else. The candle is almost out. You don't light another. You want the dark to know you. You want it to wrap around you like a shroud. You want it to carry your name beyond these walls. You remember a night when no one was afraid of fire, when it meant warmth, stories, safety. Now the fire is coming, as an ending, but part of you, the smallest, most dangerous part, still believes it might also be a beginning. They'll come at dawn. They always do. You'll not scream. You'll not plead. But tonight, while others sleep, you whispered your name to the stone. And that was magic. The sky hasn't turned yet, but they are already moving. You hear boots on the stone, jangle of keys, the scrape of rope. No words, no ritual, just motion. Your body knows its time before your mind agrees. You do not rise, you're lifted. This is the only part of the process they handle gently, the walk. Because this is the part that everyone sees. They cannot beat you now, they cannot shout. They need the illusion of order. They are not executing a woman. They are cleansing a community, and so they must look clean while doing it. You step outside for the first time in weeks. You step outside for the first time in weeks. The cold bites at your skin. You forgot how sharp the air can feel. It cuts deeper than rope. Above you, grey sky, thick, flat, as if even the heavens are indifferent. They've come to see you, not because they want to, but because it is expected, like Sunday Mass or taxes. Some believe, some doubt. Most simply don't want to be the next name whispered. So they come, they watch, and they do not speak. The children stare. One clutches his mother's hand. You see your reflection in his eyes. Not a monster, not a saint. Just a woman with too many questions and too little protection. You smile. Only once. Not for defiance, not for dignity, but because it's the last thing that's yours. It is not tall. It is not dramatic. It is not even you. It has burned others before you. The wood remembers them, and now it waits to remember you. Historical note. In 1647, a woman named Margaret Lay was walked barefoot through the streets of Chelmsford before her execution. She sang a psalm. The priest called it mocking. The court called it possession. The crowd called it bravery. She was burned before the song finished. He offers you confession, final absolution, a way to enter heaven unsigned. You ask, will it save my body? He says nothing, only raises the cross. You do not kneel, you do not curse, you simply nod and turn away. You feel your body as if it belongs to someone else, each knot distant, each breath measured. Your skin hums like a struck bell. They've done this many times. Their hands are practiced, efficient. They are not sadists, they are bureaucrats. And today, your paperwork wrapped in flesh. Fire was not chosen for pain. It was chosen for disappearance. A hanged woman leaves a body. A burnt woman leaves a warning. Smoke is easier to forget than a grave, and ash has never to be fed. You don't listen. You've heard it before. Your sentence was spoken long before his lips moved. In the whispers behind your back, in the stares when you walked too fast, in the silence when you asked too much. This part is just rehearsal. You smell it before you feel it. Oil-soaked cloth, dry timber, charred wind. The guard hesitates. Only a second. You catch his eye, and for a flicker, he sees you. Not the witch, not the threat, just a woman. And then it's gone. He lowers the torch. It climbs, like a question no one dares answer, like shame, like memory. Your dress smolders, then crackles. Your breath grows sharp, then shallow. You try to scream, but the smoke fills your first You taste the end. It is bitter. It is final. It is quiet. A priest watching a Scottish witch execution wrote, "She made no cry, only her eyes watered. I believe not from pain, but from smoke." You rise with the smoke, your body breaks, but your story does not. You've become breath, you've become memory, you've become silence that lingers, and the air will never feel clean again. No grave, no stone, no mourning cloth, only ash, scattered or swept away. And yet, your name will survive in whispers. In the silence after a woman speaks too clearly. You're not a witch. You were a mirror. And what they burned was not your soul, but their own reflection. The fire is out, the crowd has gone, the ropes are ash, and the only thing that remains is absence. There is no grave, no name etched in stone, only the smell of something once alive. But your story, it did not end with the flame. History forgets women like you, not by accident, by design, because you asked the wrong questions, because you healed without permission, because you walked alone, because you knew too much, or loved too fiercely, or spoke too clearly, and for that they burned you. Between the 15th and 18th centuries, more than 50,000 people were executed for witchcraft in Europe and colonial America. Most of them were women. Most of them were poor. Most of them were condemned for reasons that had nothing to do with spells and everything to do with power. They were midwives, mothers, widows, herbalists, poets, lonely, angry, brave. They were not evil, they were inconvenient, and the world made an example of them. If you've come this far, thank you. You walked through the trial, you felt the silence, you smelled the fire, you remembered someone. The world worked very hard to forget. And that matters, because history doesn't just live in books. It lives in the stories we choose to tell and the silences we choose to break. So ask yourself, what part of you would have been called witch? What softness or boldness or loneliness might have been enough to tie you to that stake? And what part of you will make sure they don't burn anyone like her again? If this story stayed with you, share it. Speak her name. Light a candle. Question what we call justice, because when we remember, we interrupt the forgetting, and that, in the end, is the only magic that matters.